All right, all right, all right. Welcome, 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 ladies and gentlemen. How are y'all doing? This is a little bit close to the 8 o'clock hour. It's about 7:59, but that's okay. It's 8 o'clock somewhere. So today, Tuesday, we're gonna start off our first episode and our first show slash segment called First Choice. Now, let me explain to you a little bit what First Choice is. First Choice is the career that you're in, the business that you're running. If you're an artist doing art, if you do music, different things of that nature. Was that your first choice? Did you really want to be that firefighter? Did you really want to be, that police officer? Or was it just something that you fell into and ended up loving it and ended up sticking it out? So that's what First Choice is all about. We're going to have a good time. We're going to, speak to some different people, different individuals, and we're just going to find out, exactly what's going on in their life. And we may have some crazy questions every now and then, but that's okay, though. Y'all know me. I'm Orlando Presents. That's right. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I am so overwhelmed and just happy to have our very first guest on the very first show of First Choice. And this is Miss Bonnie Cooley. Hello, hello, hello.
Hey, how are you?
Fantastic, fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
All right, all right. Well, today is Tuesday, and we just want to say thank you very much for coming on First Choice here on RYC Praise News Music Group, where music is therapy. Also, our other outlets is Quake Radio and the Devout Jamcast is our other outlets as well. So, thank you for spending some of your time with us today.
Oh, happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Not a problem at all. Not a problem at all. Now, just let the folks know who you are and where are you originally from.
Okay, so I'm Bonnie Barrett Cooley, and I am originally from Florida, born and raised in a place called Bradenton. It's probably grown huge since I was there as a child. Um, and from there, I went into the Air Force right out of high school, 17 years old, and spent some good time as an occupational therapy assistant. Learned a lot of skills. Decided that it was time to make a change. Got out, got married, moved to Tennessee, and proceeded to spend the next 20 years in Tennessee. Raised my girls, two daughters, um, and then from there the fun adventures began. so, um, so I was teaching middle school and high school science in Bristol, Virginia. It's right on the Virginia Tennessee state line, and had a blast. Loved teaching, loved educating, loved science, still do. Um, but I had always had, in the back of my head that what if I had stayed in the Air Force? The
Right.
what if questions. And I got to the point where I was like, okay, this is sitting in the back of my head. And then, the Gulf War kicked off and that was happening. And I just heard, uh, just a blurb on the radio that the military was changing uh, the enlistment age. And so, of course, by this point, 20 years later, after getting out of the Air Force, I'm thinking about this. And so I reached out to an Air Force recruiter, and they didn't, need my skills. I'm like, all right, not deterred. I reached out to the Army, met an amazing Army Medical Command recruiter. She was awesome. She had been former Air Force as well, and we just hit it off. And and I just asked a lot of questions, because at this point, I'm like 41, 42 years old. And,
Okay.
and I'm like, if this is just not going to happen, then just tell me, let's not waste my time. Let's not waste your time. I have a career as an educator, and I'm perfectly happy with my career. But, it was still in the back of my mind. And um, so, from there, we did a bunch of paperwork. I went to MEPS, which is the military entry physical system. And I passed the physical, height and weight, and all of my blood work was normal, no issues, good to go. And then it was, we were waiting.
Wow.
So
Well,
because
let's
I
stop.
know there's a lot of questions, right?
Nah. Well, yeah, I wanted to back up just a little bit. Back up when you
Sure.
first joined the Air Force. What was it about
Okay.
the Air Force that actually intrigued you? That was something that you wanted to go and do.
So my grandfather had retired from the Air Force. I had an uncle that was still in the Air Force and had been in, his whole career. And I think as I was growing up, it was just expected that, if I'm going to follow the military route, Air Force is the way to go. And that's all
Okay.
I knew, really. I didn't know anyone that had been in the Army or any other service. I had no other points of reference. So,
Okay.
um, in my nativity, I'm like Air Force all the way. Let's go.
Okay.
So,
Awesome, awesome. Well, yeah, Air Force. I mean, I was in Air Force ROTC. I know that doesn't count. I know every Veterans Day
yeah.
people put jokes on Facebook saying, "Don't put a picture up with your ROTC uniforms on for Veterans Day. That doesn't count." But
No, I would
but
count it.
but that's fine. That's fine. I don't have any pictures anyway. That's fine. Yeah, cause my dad, he was in the Air Force, 21 years. I think, staff sergeant, master staff sergeant, something like that. But
Hmm.
cause he used to be a chef out at the Pentagon back when Dick
Okay.
Cheney was Secretary of Defense, um,
Oh, wow.
back in that day and everything. So I'm glad my dad never went hunting with Dick Cheney. So for those of you
Well,
young,
this is true.
that's what I was going to say. For those of those young kids that may stumble over this podcast, you probably don't know that reference, but look it up. Look it up. You'll understand. uh,
Yes.
exactly. um, for far as whatever that you may be able to speak on it, what is some of the differences or the nuances or differences between the Air Force and Army that you picked up on like right away when you re-enlisted into the Army?
So, so there were a couple of things. So when I was in the Air Force, I was enlisted. When I came into the Army, I came in as an officer. So huge difference between how basic training is done.
Hmm.
Um, and we're talking about a 20-year difference as well. So you know things do change over the course of 20 years, even in the government. I know it's slow, but um, I think the one thing that was really obvious to me is how much bigger the Army is in terms of the number of personnel, and um, and the difference in the way the Army moves.
Mm.
Obviously, they're more ground based. movement, whereas the Air Force is going to be more of, an air platform. Um, so I think that was one of the big differences. And even in the Air Force, as a very young enlisted airman, I didn't get an opportunity to fire any other weapons. I just went to the range when they said, let's go to the range and, you have to qualify. And I'm laughing, going, let's see how this works for us. Um, but then, in the Army, my first duty station was at Fort Carson, Colorado. And we were getting ready to deploy to Afghanistan. And our brigade commander wanted us to do this training round robin. And I don't know where the name came from, but it was called the Mungadai. And it was in the, let me assure you, there were days I'm like, I want to die.
Oh
Um,
man.
it was tough. It was 10 degrees below zero, and we're doing some field exercise things and carrying in full rucksacks, and snow on the ground, and obviously in December in Colorado. But the really great thing is because it was a round robin type of training, I got to experience what it was like to fire a 50 caliber weapon and really get to see some of the tactics and techniques for calling in airstrikes and some of the things that you might actually need in a deployed environment with a hostile enemy. So it was quite interesting because I totally did not expect that would be something I would get an opportunity to do.
Oh wow.
So I got to, play with some of the weapons, at least hands on, maybe didn't fire a whole bunch, but, just getting an appreciation for, the soldiers that have to carry those weapons around in a battlefield.
Right.
It's like, oh, that's another 70 pounds I don't carry. But, yeah, so that was really a big difference. Is that we were in the middle of a conflict, and we were training to be in that conflict, which was completely different than when I was in the Air Force. I worked in a hospital. As a matter of fact, I worked at Wolford Hall at Lackland Air Force Base, and just a couple of years ago. So when I was there, Wolford Hall was brand new, state of the art medical facility across, bar none, across the DoD, and they just tore it down a couple of years ago. So,
wow.
Those things come full circle.
Yeah. Well, I have another question, and this question here may get you in trouble with some of your Air Force buddies, or it may get you in trouble with some of your Army buddies.
Oh boy.
Now, with me being a military brat myself, I've always heard this all the time growing up and everything, that when you join the Air Force is because of your smarts. When you join the Army or the Marines, not so much. So
I I would say that is not true in the medical field. I don't know about any other parts because I'm in the medical field, so I can't speak for some of those other things.
Right.
I mean, I worked with a young E4 when I was stationed at Fort Eustis. Super smart young lady. She had a master's degree in finance, and I'm asking her, why didn't you come in as a comptroller, as an officer? And she didn't want to. She wanted to experience, the real Army.
Wow.
I mean, I'm not saying that officers don't experience the real Army, but but she wanted to have all of those experiences before she made a decision whether she wanted to be an officer or not.
Okay.
So you know, are there some individuals that probably, I don't know. I don't know what anybody's ASVAB
Right.
scores look like. So
Right.
um, so I've met some incredibly intelligent, creative, um, intuitive, um, young enlisted soldiers that blew me away. So that's, I mean, I can't say one way or the other as to the smarts or not smarts. I think everybody has a place,
Right.
and I think what is your calling, and everybody has a different story, and so
That's
I
very
I
true.
like to hear their stories about what made you decide this route as opposed to that route, and
Very true.
that's been part of one of the pieces that I really enjoy is being that mentor and getting to know my soldiers. So I'm still in the reserves. I got off active duty August of 2020, and so I still get to hang out and go put my boots on and play out in the dirt and really you know elbows deep in the grind. And I mean, there's just some super smart people that are on my medical check. But I'm just like, I'm blown away by what they accomplish and how creative and thinking out of the box that they do.
Right.
So you know,
Okay, okay. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. That was just a little jokey joke anyway. But that does go around a little bit. But that was just a joke. But
I've heard it myself. But the flip side is, I mean, there's the 4-man teams that are going to breach a building.
right.
I've done those experiences in training. I've never had to do them, real life scenarios, but
Mm,
so we all get to take a crack at doing some different things,
right.
and things that are outside of our fields, and maybe outside of our comfort zones. So
That's
I
awesome.
think that's what the growth piece is of being in the military, is having those opportunities to push yourself and learn about yourself, and um, and know that you are a part of a team
Hmm.
that is always going to be there for you.
Yeah, exactly,
You
exactly,
know.
and that's the truth. That's the truth. Well,
Mhm.
with us just passing through like 2 years ago with the pandemic and things of that nature, with you being on the medical team, what kind of differences did the army have to take place with with the pandemic being so imminent within within the military, within the army?
So so one of the big things, and before I left active duty, it was probably 8 months before I left active duty is when the pandemic, people started recognizing that there's something going on with this COVID virus. Something's happening, and so initially, what I saw where I was at Fort Bliss was that there was a lot of monitoring. There were a lot of questions, and it wasn't too long after everybody kind of started to see the numbers going up, number of cases, positive cases, and the death toll starting to rise. That um, there was an actual the Army instituted a restriction of movement, and only essential personnel really were in their offices, and that kind of kicked off for a lot of people um, teleworking,
Mm,
and then there were a lot of questions about masking and very limited number of COVID tests. I mean, the hospitals literally maybe had 100 tests, and they were saving those for, people who really were going on respirators just to
mm,
make sure that that's what was going on. So the early days there was a lot of anxiety and a lot of meetings, a lot of you know short turnarounds for information,
right.
and really monitoring all the news channels and the CDC, um, just to understand what we were dealing with, and then completely differently from that, of course, then the Pentagon's doing their analysis and trying to figure out, what are we going to do, and how is this going to impact mission, etc. And that particular year, which was 2020, the Department of Defense stopped all um, permanent change of station moves, and everybody was locked down.
Mm,
So it was essential personnel only, like I said, and I mean, and obviously on the medical side, people still have to go into the hospital to do their jobs. That you can't remote into the ICU. So
yeah,
you know,
right.
so so there were a lot of questions about precautions and PPE and isolation, and so that just took a while for the federal government to lay down some ground rules. And then, of course, the DoD and all the other agencies in the federal government started implementing those um, as they were coming forward. So,
Okay. Awesome, awesome. I have a question, and I'm not sure if you would probably even know an answer to this or not, or if you even thought of this or not. Um, is there any way, and have you ever thought about, do do more people enlist in the military because of who the president is?
I would say no,
Okay.
and I'll tell you why. Because, and I think there are, I think you could Google this, and see what I'm saying is typically enlistments change based on economics.
Mm,
So when I was a very junior officer, we're getting ready to go to Afghanistan, and we have people that are now medics that have been plumbers and contractors building houses. But because the economy had, in 2008, took that hit, by the time I joined in 2009, there were a lot of people that were um, looking at it as an option because their businesses went bankrupt and they had a family to feed.
mm,
So my personal opinion is I think it's more based on economics than it is on political
right.
atmosphere at the time. Not to say that some people don't join because of that political atmosphere. I would 100% say that's true.
Mm.
Um, but to say the majority, I don't think that is true.
Okay. Okay.
But that's
Awesome.
just Bonnie's opinion. That's Bonnie's
Okay.
opinion.
Y'all heard that, right? So don't get on her. That's just Miss Bonnet's opinion. All right. I want to I want to go back a little bit to after when you say when you got out from the Air Force and you went into teaching. Is there any time that you feel that you may go back doing that after you get out of the army, or will you just enjoy being retired from the military and just sit back, drinking some mai tais with your hubby?
No, I still, I have the desire to teach, and I always enjoyed teaching. And as a matter of fact, I've got a couple of things in the works. So in my reserve status right now, I'm with an MP, a military police
Hmm.
battalion stationed up at Fort Meade. And so, I do my one weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. My 2 weeks a year are coming up in a couple of weeks. Um, but I was offered an opportunity to work with the folks at the Uniform Services University of Health Sciences and their campus is on Naval Station Bethesda, where Walter Reed Hospital is. And so, I mean, literally as we speak, we're working on the paperwork so that I can transfer over and do some education piece as part of my reserve duties.
Wow.
Um, I will tell you, even on the MP side, my favorite thing to do with the soldiers is teach them about sanitation and hot weather injuries and cold weather injuries, and so any opportunity I get to teach young soldiers how to better take care of themselves and take care of their buddies. Because my job is, I'm not a physician.
Hmm.
I'm an environmental science and engineering officer, which translates into the civilian side. I'm a registered environmental health specialist.
Okay.
Um, so, um, I jokingly say, food, water, bugs, and poop. If it falls in that lane, it's mine. If it's a band-aid and stitches, it's not mine. Um, so having the opportunities to teach about those things, which a lot of people don't even realize that the military has this job. So, it's really exciting to, talk to folks about, Fort Carson, for example, they have several cases every year of bubonic plague. Well, they get it from the fleas that are living on the prairie dogs. They go and set up their field exercise in the middle of a prairie dog community, and people get bitten by the fleas and they
Mm.
get bubonic plague. So in order to help mitigate that, one of my jobs would be to advise the commander that if you decide you want to use this space, these are the risks. I cannot mitigate prairie dogs living in this area. They're protected, but I may be able to make recommendations for other locations that would accomplish the mission
Right.
without that um, type of a risk
Right.
being incurred.
Without
So,
harming your fellow officers and everything. Right. Okay.
mm-hmm,
Wow.
right,
Wow.
right,
Okay.
yep.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, well,
It's
before
a
I
fun job.
Hey, it sounds like it. It definitely sounds like it. Before I let you go, I just have a last question here. Have you ever thought about going on to the recruiting side of things? Going into the high schools, the colleges, things of that nature, and try to recruit for the Army?
So the Army has a whole recruiting command, and they do that. Um, they do utilize medical officers as recruiters, but it's almost like that becomes your job
Mm,
as opposed to you're doing your day job and then going to these, universities and whatnot um, as a, as a like a weekend to talk at trade shows or college days or whatever. Um, I have not thought about going back into the public school system. I have no doubt that I would be more than qualified and able to teach an
mm,
ROTC or something like that. Um, but I'm not 100% sure how those are appointed or how one even goes down that path. Um,
okay.
Going back into public schools has not really been something that I've been pursuing. I'm kind of looking in a different avenue as far as teaching. I'm a certified yoga instructor, and that was my pandemic project. Um, so I really want to at this point in my life, I feel more drawn to teaching others about wellness and yoga and stress reduction. And I'm actually in the middle of a course now where we're looking at trauma-based yoga therapy. And so there's so many other things that I think I can bring, to that community, um, working with other vets to teach them meditation and yoga practices and breathing techniques to help manage things like PTSD and help improve quality of life
Right.
for folks who are really struggling. Especially our combat vets, because there's
Exactly.
things that get seen you can't unsee. So, um,
Yeah, I just only imagine. Definitely.
yeah,
Well,
yeah. So I think that's kind of where I'm leaning at this point in my life.
okay, awesome, awesome. Well, Miss Bonnie Cooley, thank you very much for coming on the show, First Choice. You are the first choice because you're the first person to kick off this show slash segment. So thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me, Orlando. I've really enjoyed this.
Not a problem at all. Me as myself as well. I really enjoyed it too. So definitely, I learned a little bit more about you than I think I thought I was going to. But it's all good. It's all good.
Awesome,
But
awesome.
all right, all right. Well, you enjoy the rest of your evening, and once again, thank you very much for coming on.
All righty. Well, thanks again for having me.
All righty. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you just got through listening to First Choice with Bonnie Cooley, and I'm your host, Orlando Presents. Next Tuesday, we will be sitting down with another owner of her own seafood restaurant or seafood place here in the Virginia area, actually in the Whitestones area. So they sell seafood. They go out in the morning and they get the seafood together. She has a Captain Seafood guy who she's married to, or so we're gonna learn a little bit about that, and we're gonna figure out, was that her first choice. And you will be seeing some flyers on Facebook and everything about that. So remember, man, is it your first choice in what you decided to do? If not, it's all good. You have something else that you can probably fall back on within your life. And if it was your first choice, come on the show. Let us know about your first choice. All right? We're out. Enjoy the rest of the music here on RYC Praise News Music Group, where music is therapy. Y'all have a great night. Peace.